Hello and welcome to the WTF podcast with The Flow. My name is Stephanie Babane and I'm here to help answer all of your WTF questions when it comes to all things related to spirituality, mindset, and the metaphysical. I'll answer your what the F, who the F, where the F, when the F, why the F, and even though it doesn't start with a W, the occasional how the F questions that you might have upon entering the world of personal development and embarking on a spiritual journey. Ultimately, my hope and intention is that at the end of every single episode, you leave smiling and understanding a little bit more about yourself and how to live a happier life in the flow with this miraculous, infinitely expanding, all-loving universe that we all call home. I love you. Let's effing do this. Hello and happy new year. Welcome back to the WTF podcast, or welcome if it's your first time. Maybe you're binge listening. I don't know. That'd be pretty cool though. Anyway, happy official 2023. I am feeling so good about this year. I don't know about you, but I am really looking forward to growing in 2023, leaving behind what no longer serves me in 2022, taking and receiving all of the lessons and just moving forward. So I hope that you had a wonderful time celebrating, however you chose to celebrate. Or maybe you didn't. Maybe you just stayed at home. I know that I for sure kept it really low key this year. Notice I haven't done anything really for the past few New Year's. So I told myself that 2024, I'm going to do something big. So let's jump right into it. First episode of 2023. Maybe this episode I'll get to have a super quiet background without a doggy noise of some sort. But hey, I think it's charming. So this is the fourth and final episode of What the F are the Laws of the Universe. There are 12 that I have been going over, and I have done 3 per episode. So we have officially been over 9 of the laws so far. And then this fourth and final episode will be the final 3. So to recap, the laws that I have gone over so far are the Law of Divine Oneness, Law of Vibration, the Law of Correspondence, the Law of Attraction, the Law of Inspired Action, the Law of Perpetual Transmutation of Energy, the Law of Cause and Effect, and the Law of Compensation. And I'm super curious. I would love to know what you guys have thought about these laws so far. If you're in the Facebook group, I would love for you to share any insights or questions you might have about these laws so far, because they are something to be studied for your whole life. I mean, this podcast is a great entryway into them, but remember, these laws are on all the time, just like gravity, whether you're aware of it or not, whether you feel like it or not, they're on all the time. There is no off switch. So ideally, we're learning how to work in harmony with them. So what are the final 3? What the F are the final 3 laws of the universe that I will be explaining in this episode? The first one, oh, I apologize. I missed one. I also explained the law of relativity. Oops. Okay, now what are the final 3? The final 3 are the law of polarity, the law of rhythm, and the law of gender. So let's go straight into the law of polarity. I may have hinted to this law sort of in other episodes because I have mentioned the word contrast numerous times. So the law of polarity states that everything has an opposite. Everything. And the existence of these opposites is something that we can really use to help gain perspective in our lives. So everything has an opposite. There is no inside without an outside. There can be no up without down. There can be no hot without cold. Everything has an opposite. The way that this law can help us find perspective is by helping us to see the good in life, but also to embrace, again, what I call contrast. Contrast is also a word that I learned first from Abraham Hicks. Contrast is those moments and experiences that we don't necessarily love to experience. They're the trauma, they're the heartache, they're even the little uh, the little third world, I'm sorry, oh my god, the little first world problems. I was gonna say third world problems. They're the little first world problems that we have. They're all the things that we don't like that we experience. How do we use the law of polarity to appreciate those experiences? If you truly grasp and understand that because everything has an opposite, so if you had all of these, what we would consider negative experiences, by law, if it's that bad, it means it has to be that good. It has to be by law. Meaning, if you are really, really, really freaking broke right now, that also means that by law, you can be really, 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 really wealthy. Or if you're really, really, really sick right now, by law, that means that you can be really, really, really healthy. And it goes on and on and on. It's not easy in the beginning to appreciate the contrast. This is not something that I am saying is, just gonna overnight, like, oh, I'm sick and I'm gonna find gratitude for it. I'm not saying that that's an easy thing. Everything that I say in this podcast, these are things that are practice. But once you practice them, they become easier. And it's all about studying and gaining awareness. And when you have a greater awareness, it becomes easier because you can do these practices from a place of faith and knowing what the intention is behind why you're doing what it is that you're doing. So the law of polarity is one that I definitely like to use in my life. And it kind of sounds like the law of relativity because, if you think about the law of relativity and finding gratitude, that's something that I explained as well is, well, it's kind of like Shakespeare's, I think it was Shakespeare, where the quote is, I was complaining about my shoes, but then I met a man with no feet, or something like that. That's more the law of relativity, of appreciating what you have relative to what someone else has, or relative to where you used to be, or whatever it might be. Whereas polarity is, I have this experience and I don't like it. What is the opposite of it? It cannot exist without the other. There is no good without bad. There is no right without wrong. And the thing about our world is that we are very, very, very inclined to focus on what's quote unquote wrong and what's quote unquote negative. If you look at the news, this is why I always tell people stop watching the news. If you look at the news, it's always bad news. The newspapers, same thing. Magazines, same thing. And to be fair, our brain also has a tendency to go towards the negative because our brain is basically a problem solving machine. And, growing up, one of the words that we hear more often than any other word is no. So we're just pretty much set up from the very beginning to gear towards the negative, to gear towards what's wrong. So it's actually a very conscious effort on our part to look for the good, to look for what's right in any situation, no matter how shitty that situation seems. I right now, right off the top of my head, like I remember, I'm thinking about my cat. And this is gonna sound like a very sad story that I'm about to randomly tell, but I basically came home one day and my cat was just not alive. My cat was dead on the floor. I had no idea why. I had there was no indication of him being sick or anything like that. He was fine in the morning. Still to this day, I don't know why my cat passed away. And I remember I didn't even really know the laws. I was just really getting into spirituality. And I remember, of course, I was crying and it was a very traumatic experience for me. But even in that time, I was just saying, I know that this is happening for some kind of reason. And I know that there's good in it somewhere. It's just, I don't know what it is. And I can't say that I necessarily know what the good is. Obviously, I'd love for my cat to be here. Sometimes I think that the good is because financially I was in a really rough place at one point, and having a third cat would have been really difficult. There are ways that you can find the good. When I was going through that hard financial place, for example, I wish I had known about this law actually, because my hardest time was I was in this limbo place of, you know, I went from a place of feeling very prosperous, which actually is a perfect example of another example of the law that I'm going to give, but also law of polarity. I was in a place where I was earning double what I was making before, and I was, just on a high. And then things came crashing down. And so I had this really conflicting moment where I had this awareness of like, well, I manifested or created this prosperity. I know that I can do it. I've had it. I know that this mindset stuff works, but here I am struggling to pay the bills, and I feel depressed. And so forth and so on and so on. The only thing that I had was, I know that something is going to come from this. Like, I know that I'm going to have a high after this. I know that there's something that I'm going to gain from this, even though I was in the thick of it. And it was basically a second depression for me. I, at the very least, had this knowingness of something good is going to come from this. And I looked for the good however I could. Like, I know there's going to be a lesson. So I'm kind of moving into the law of rhythm, to be honest, but I'm using the law of polarity as an example of just in any situation that you're in, know that it has an exact opposite. So use it to your advantage. If you are ever not in a place that you like, think the opposite. If you have a really, really negative thought, think the opposite. If you have uncovered a belief about yourself that you know is holding you back, like I'm not worthy, or money's the root of all evil, or uh, I'm not worthy of love, something like that, what's the opposite? And then let that be your truth. Repeat that, because remember, a belief is a thought that you have just repeated or heard over and over enough times until it became ingrained in you. And it took over your subconscious mind, which took over your actions, which gave you the results that you have. So the law of polarity is definitely something that for me helps me build faith and hope of like, oh, I don't like this, not a fan of this, but thank you for the contrast. I'm so happy to know that the opposite is now like a possibility. And so I just start to focus on the opposite. So that's the law of polarity. And again, feel free to look deeper into these laws, because I am only giving about a like 10-minute to 15-minute lesson on each of them. And maybe they don't need any more, but anything that I teach you, don't just take my word for it. Study it. Try it yourself. Apply it. So moving on from the law of polarity, we next have, as I mentioned, the law of rhythm. So the law of rhythm is basically all about cycles. The law of rhythm states that everything comes in cycles and nothing stays in one state forever. So this is the perfect example is the changing of the seasons. Every single year, unless you live in Miami, you can count on the seasons. I know, and even in Miami, we still mark the seasons. It's just we don't see the snow and the changing leaves or whatever. But no matter what, without fail, every single year we have the 4 seasons. We have summer, we have winter, we have summer, fall. Oh my God, what is the order of them? It's summer, spring, winter, fall. Oh my God, I have to think this. Whatever. The 4 seasons. I can't think of the order right now. I guess I have to think about it in school. I know winter's towards the end, and then we come back into spring. Is it spring, summer, winter? Spring, summer, fall, winter? God, somebody feel free to let me know. I'll Google it after. But anyway, so the law of rhythm, a perfect example is the seasons. No season, it doesn't just stay one season forever, it goes through cycles. The way that we can use the law of rhythm is by remembering that nothing is permanent in life. And this comes into practicing non attachment. So, when you are going through a really, really difficult time, I'm sure you've heard it at least once before of this too shall pass. That's the law of rhythm. Nothing is permanent in life, even the good things. And I'm not saying that that means that you should start to believe that the next shoe is going to drop. It just means that people go through cycles too. We go through highs and lows. And so that's why I was saying in the law of polarity that I was kind of getting into the law of rhythm, because when I was saying that I was in a low place, I knew that it was going to be met with a high. I just knew that. I said, I am in a bottom. That means that I'm going to have a high. And that's not necessarily a good thing. Obviously, I would say that the ideal is to have a consistent, steady state of stability as far as emotions go and life and all of that. But as human beings, even in just our energy levels, we have a rhythm. Some days we feel on top of the world. We're singing with the birds. We're skipping down the road and everything works out well. And then there's some days where we're just not feeling it. We're just having a lower energy day. And for women, especially, I mean, we literally get a period every single month where we just have our rhythm is different. I don't want to say off. I almost said off, but it's just different. What I found interesting when I was looking into this law was I was watching a video of Bob Proctor explain it, and he was talking about how we as humans have these highs and low experiences, these high energy days and these low energy days. But he said, but I want to know that no matter what, if I have a low rhythm day, that I'm in charge of me. And it doesn't matter if my energy is low, I'm still going to have a good day. So I thought that was really, really interesting, because when I also looked into it, uh, another site suggested listening to your rhythms. Of, for example, if you're someone who works a lot and then you start to feel a little bit tired, that could mean that your rhythm is suggesting that you take a break and you slow down and you take it easy. And so am I would say I'm of the opinion of both, which is sometimes, yeah, you've got to listen to your body. And if you're feeling lower energy, especially if you're sick, just FYI, if you're someone who gets sick very often, that is a very, very, very clear sign from not just your body, but the universe, which is also your subconscious mind. They're the same, that you need to slow down and you need to rest. You need to rest, you need to sit, you need to reflect. Sickness is the universe basically taking care of it for you because you're not doing it. That's just how it goes. I don't get sick very often, and the times that I have recently were the times where I was feeling very depressed or I wasn't taking very good care of myself physically or emotionally. And because I don't get sick often, I took it very seriously of like, oh, I'm having my ass sat down by the universe right now. So if you get sick frequently, or if you don't get sick frequently, and you do get sick, either way, it's a sure sign that you are being asked to slow down and take a rest and maybe do some thinking and reflecting on your life. But as far as the law of rhythm goes, I would agree for sure that if you are not feeling high vibe and you just need to take a break and let go of the hustle and do a detox from social media or something like that, absolutely absolutely do that. And also, you are in control of you. You are in charge of you. So maybe you're feeling a little more low energy during a time where you had something that requires high energy and you can't postpone it. I don't know. Maybe you're going to do a presentation or a seminar or vacation. Well, you're in charge of you. You are your mind's controller. So find the energy, create the energy, lift your vibration, and then afterwards, if you need to take the rest, take it. But know that you can pick yourself up out of that if you want to. It just has to be important enough to you. So I would say that's a combination of Bob Proctor's perspective and what I read on the other site. So it's basically saying to listen to your inner rhythm uh, and then decide what you want to do with it. Either way, you've got to feel it. So that is the law of rhythm. And the final law that I'm going to explain out of the 12 is the law of gender. Okay. So the law of gender, it's not about man and woman. So this is a tricky one for me to explain because I've yet to really explain it in a way that it wouldn't maybe sound sexist to people. Uh, so the law of gender states that there are two types of energy: masculine energy and feminine energy. And in order to and so this masculine and feminine energy, it's in everything and it's in everyone. So physically, I am a woman. Like, yes, my sex is female, that's my gender. But I have both masculine and feminine energies in me. I was going to say principles, but masculine and feminine energies in my body. So do you. If you're a man and you have the physical traits of a man, you have masculine and feminine energies. If you are non-binary, if you're transgender, it doesn't matter. Every single human being has masculine and feminine energy in them. Plants have masculine and feminine energies in them. Dogs and cats, masculine and feminine. Everything in the universe has masculine and feminine energies in them. Where some people feel it starts to get sexist, which is where I haven't learned how to explain it in a way where it doesn't, is that the masculine energy is considered the energy of doing, of taking charge, of taking action, and executing on ideas, basically. Whereas the feminine energy is considered the more nurturing, playful, receptive energy. The only way that I can think to explain it as far as not it being sexist, which is really just a perspective, and I don't think that, but I know that I've had conversations where people are like, what? The only way that I can say that it's not sexist is we all have these qualities. If you're feeling like it's sexist, and that's basically because you're saying that why does the feminine have to be the nurturing one, and why can't the feminine be the action taking one? And I didn't make up the universe. I would love to explain it, but some things just are, and it doesn't have to be a bad thing. And again, we all have these qualities. So a woman can 100% take action and do and be and do all the things that the masculine energy is described as, and she can also receive. And the man can be playful and nurturing and loving as the feminine principles are described as. And he can also be the action taker. Of course, as a man, they're more likely going to lean towards the masculine, and ideally, a woman is leaning more towards her feminine. But we have both of these qualities. And both of them are required for creation. You cannot have a baby with two women, unfortunately. I mean, you can as far as the adoption goes, but as far as reproduction goes, you need a sperm and you need an egg. You need a masculine sperm, quote unquote, and a feminine, quote unquote, egg. So That's the law. So you need both of these to create a physical baby, obviously, but in general, to create a manifestation, you need both. Because if you think about the laws, like I said, the law of inspired action, that's like the masculine, but you also need to be in the receptive mode, as I talked about the law of vibration, aligning your energy. You need both to create. You need the masculine and the feminine. The other thing that the law of gender explains is that every manifestation has a gestation period, meaning that if you go back to uh, the law of, I believe it was cause and effect, of you reap what you sow. If you go back to that example, I can't remember if it was law of cause and effect or not, but if you go back to you reap what you sow, right? You plant the seed in the ground. That seed is not going to just pop up into a bunch of crops or a tree overnight. There's a gestation period in between when it transforms from a seed into a giant oak tree. Or no, that's an acorn. Acorns turn to oak trees, but you know what I mean. And before it turns into the crop. Even if you have an instant manifestation, for example, I'm thinking of my friend. He basically like had a thought the other day that he wanted some ducks. And then literally a few minutes later, he got a call about some ducks that needed to be rescued, found a duck coop. I don't know how. And he had an instant manifestation. Even though it was pretty instant, the gestation period was still there of a few seconds. So I'm not saying that the gestation period has to be a long time, but there's still a period of time in between when you have first planted the seed of the idea and nurtured it. So a time in between when you planted the seed, nurtured it, and the actual physical manifestation of it coming into your physical reality. And this law is so important because a lot of people will do a lot of the work required in order to receive the goal that they want. But because it's taking longer than they would have thought or expected, they start to give up on the whole thing, not realizing that they're like right about to receive it, because they just don't realize that there's a gestation period. And sometimes it's not always instantaneous, but it doesn't mean that it's not coming. It doesn't mean that it's not here. But then they give up and they push it away. And all of that work was just not undone, but didn't result in their goal, didn't result in their manifestation, because they didn't have the patience and the faith and the trust and the knowing that it was coming. It's like planting a seed and then saying, this seed's not growing, but it is growing. It's 100% growing. It's taking root. It's sprouting out of the ground. And if you just give it a little bit more time, you're going to have a beautiful tree with an abundance of fruit that's going to have an abundance of seeds to make even more fruit. So that is, in a nutshell, the law of gender. And these, I feel, were a lot shorter explanations of the laws, which I find so interesting. But I feel I've said pretty much everything that I need to say about them. I really, I guess, just want to emphasize going back to just remembering that when it comes to the law of rhythm, to really use that to just remind yourself anytime that you're having a challenging moment that this too shall pass. That is such a powerful mantra when you're not, really having a good time in life, is this too shall pass. And again, it doesn't mean that you start to think about, oh, like good things don't last. It's just, that's not what it means. It just means that nothing in life is permanent. And oh, yes, I wanted to go into non attachment, which means basically you're not going to ever leave with what you have. Non attachment is about not being attached to any object that you have in your life or any person or any experience, because you understand that when you leave your physical body, when you die, nothing's going with you. And you realize that even though you can love those things and have them and enjoy them as you should, they are not a part of you, and they do not make you, and they are not who you are, and they have nothing to do with your identity. They're just things that you have, that you enjoy, that you like, that you experience. But if they were all taken away from you at a moment's notice, it would not affect your peace. It would not affect your identification with who you are and how you see yourself. And that is, I think, such a perfect example of like the law of rhythm. If you're incredibly wealthy, it doesn't mean that your wealth is necessarily going to go away because of the law of rhythm. But if it did, it doesn't mean that you are suddenly no longer worthy. It's just a cycle. It's just something that happened in your life, and you can rebuild it and you can come back from it. So, law of rhythm, this too shall pass. And with that, I'm going to leave it here. That was my first ever 4-part series. I am so, so grateful for you to be here to listen to it. And I think it is so cool that it led into the first new year. I think that the perfect thing that we will do for this next episode coming up is to start talking about goals. Because in the last episode, I talked about setting goals versus resolutions. And so next episode will be about that. Just to recap before I wrap this whole episode up, let's go over the final run through of the 12 laws of the universe that we went over here. One more time: the law of divine oneness, the law of vibration, the law of correspondence, the law of attraction, the law of inspired action, the law of perpetual transmutation of energy, the law of cause and effect, the law of compensation, the law of relativity, the law of polarity, the law of rhythm, and the law of gender. Every single one of these laws is happening right now in this very moment. They're impacting you, they're impacting me, and it's our job to become aware of them and how we are working with them, or if we're working with them at all. I hope that this 4-part series brought a lot of value to you, that it created a lot of curiosity in your mind and helped you raise a lot of questions and inspired you to understand who you are a little bit more, and where you stand with the universe and how the universe works. And I don't think that it's a life well spent trying to understand the entire universe, because there are just some things that we're not meant to know. But the laws that govern us all, I think those are pretty important. So again, happy new year. Thank you so much for listening. I love you so freaking much. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week. And I will talk to you soon. Till next time. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode of the WTF podcast. I hope that you gained all kinds of value from listening and that your WTF question was answered. If you like what you heard and you want to hear more, then be sure to hit the subscribe button and follow me on Instagram at Coach Stephanie B. If you have a WTF question of your own, or you have any interest in working one-on-one with me, then feel free to send me a private message. And when it comes to your question, I'll do my best to answer it either here or privately. In the meantime, until the next episode, I'm wishing you the most wonderful day, the most wonderful week, and reminding you to smile and then see if you can make somebody else smile. Until next time.